The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. On December 8, 2022, Jennifer Whiteside was appointed Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in British Columbia. At the time, she said, the Premier has asked me to prioritize accelerating BC's response to the illicit drug toxicity crisis. She went on to say the Premier has also asked me to expand new complex care, treatment, recovery, detox, and aftercare facilities across the province. Then, months later, the BC Centre for Disease Control released its report showing that in 2022, overdoses from opioids and illicit drugs were now the leading cause of death for youth 10 to 18 years of age. The minister issued a statement saying, the toxic drug crisis continues to have a devastating impact on families and communities in BC, and the impact on children and youth is heartbreaking. Well, hollow words to Garth Mullins, an organizer with the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, who said, it seems to me that the minister's job is to be the official mourner, someone who is there to cry publicly about the mass deaths, but isn't empowered to do anything. So where does the family turn to then when they need help? Chantal, Vallerand, the executive director at Drug Free Kids Canada, says, we know how difficult it is for families. Most don't know the boundaries of what they can and cannot say or do. So we created Drug Free Canada's Kids to help parents facing the life and death reality of drugs. I invited Chantal Vallerand of Drug Free Kids to join me for a conversation that matters about resources and strategies that can and do help families address the growing drug crisis in Canada. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you.
It is bad, isn't it? It really is bad.
Well, it's bad. As you mentioned, the leading cause of death for youth in Western Canada, 10 to 18, is overdose from illicit drug use. And the average age of experimentation in Canada for alcohol is 13 years old and 14 years old to cannabis. So it's important to engage in conversations at this point for parents and their kids.
When we're talking about experimentation, though, we're not talking about experimentation the way in which many may have thought, oh, okay, so you're going to try a little bit of marijuana. Marijuana today is not what it was before. The toxicity or the lethality of it is now grown to a point where it becomes a dangerous substance all on its own.
It's just that the level of potency has significantly increased from what we would have known back in the day. Whereas, a joint back in the day could vary between 3, 5, 8% level of THC. A kid initiating themselves, for example, through vaping, could be faced with a level of potency of 97% THC. So it is crazy to think that, a kid would be experimenting at such level of potency then would require hospitalization because panic attacks and not being used to there's no way they have developed a tolerance to it. So it's important to engage in those conversations, to have those facts and share the evidence with our kids so that they know.
Well, it's because we don't have a margin of error here, do we?
Correct. Again, whereas before experimentation with alcohol, if kids are overusing alcohol in one occasion, they may feel nauseous, they get their lesson, they know how it feels.
They throw up.
They throw up, fair
Right.
enough, right? So, but if a kid all of a sudden decides to experiment with pills, pills are laced with fentanyl. And it's very hard for anybody, even somebody at a law level, for a police officer, to look at two different pills and know which one is the legal pill and which one is the illegal pill. So a kid may decide, thinking that they're buying legit a drug that's medication and can die from it. And we don't try to be alarmists at Drug Free Kids. We don't want to approach it with scare tactics because we know they don't work. But at the same time, as you mentioned, there's no margin of error if they're experimenting with pills that could kill them.
You told me a very sad story about a young man who went up to his room and share the story.
So
Yeah.
he was having dinner with his parents and his siblings, normal family setting, right before Christmas, having pizza. And he said, I'm just going to go up to my room, I'm going to study a bit, and I'm going to do some gaming, and I'm going to go to bed. And his parents saw nothing of it. They didn't have any problems with this kid. He went up to his room, proceeded to do some gaming, and decided to take what he thought was oxy as a pill, and told his friends online who he was playing with, and then developed sensations in his forearms with pins and needles, not feeling super well, and then said to his friends online, not feeling good, I'm going to sleep it off. He proceeded to put on his PJs, brush his teeth, went to bed. The next morning, his dad went to wake him up for him to go to school, 15-year-old boy, and unfortunately, Metzis had passed away. He didn't wake up. And his dad, from it, has been very vocal in the Quebec media. This boy was from Montreal, and was saying, I just wish that he would have felt comfortable enough to come to me and say, I did something silly, I took a pill, I thought it was oxy, but I'm not feeling good. He said, I would have had time to rush him to the hospital. Instead, he died alone in his bed. So he was encouraging parents to say, have this conversation, normalize this conversation, and allow your kids to come to you and tell them, no matter what, you can come to me, because I'd rather, be able to try to fix this than not being able to have you in my life anymore.
Well, the horror of losing a child that way would be devastating. And so I can't help it in hearing that story going, the parent probably didn't know that the child was going to take oxy either.
No.
Just on its own, I mean, there we are. And so how then do you start to fight that? You had this wonderful metaphor about lakes.
Yes, correct.
And I think it so aptly sort of sets the stage for understanding what it is that we're dealing with and maybe what strategies we could employ.
Correct. So in Canada, we're known to have the most lakes in the world. And, as a society, if we wanted to avoid people from drowning, we could say, we're actually just going to drain all these lakes, or we're going to raise these big fences so no one will ever come close to the lakes and no one's going to drown. Problem solved. Doesn't happen like that. What do we do as Canadians? Most of us, the first class that their kids are going to be, the first activity we're going to do with the kid, we're going to bring them to the pool and we're going to teach them how to swim, because we want to avoid that, right? We want to avoid for them to fall into some water and drown. We can't control the drug market. I can't.
No.
But what I can do is make sure that I'm equipping the kids with the right information so that when they're faced, and I have a 16 and an 18-year-old. I'm not going to be there when they go to that party and they get offered that oxy or whatever they're being offered. I just hope that at that point in time, I will have had enough conversation, not just one, but enough conversation, that sharing all these facts, that they're aware of the decision that they're making, and they're making the best, safest decision possible. And if in the instance that they didn't, and all of a sudden they made a decision that, was not safe for them, that they call on me or call on somebody they trust so that they can be helped.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So in that analogy or metaphor that you use about lakes, okay, I don't want you to drown because, number one, I want you to be able to enjoy the water, which is a little bit different than saying I want you to enjoy drugs.
Yeah.
But still, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to equip you with life skills that are going to ensure that you're not going to die.
Yeah.
As a parent, you recognize that you need to do that very early.
Correct.
So in that metaphor, is that what we have to start doing when
that
it comes to...
That urgency should be there with your kids at a young age too, right? As a toddler, when you're giving them vitamins, or, we give them antibiotics that taste like cherry or bubblegum or whatever, and the kid may not understand and may not have the capacity at a young age to understand that that's medication. Introducing the notion that it is medication, it's meant to make you feel good, but at a certain dosage, administered by somebody that you trust, and you should never be taking that, and it's not candy. Introducing these concepts early will lead to, more mature conversations down the line, but introducing the aspect of health in those conversations and concern as a parent, you should start that as soon as you're capable of having those conversations with your kids.
So in my introduction, I talked about some of the resources that the minister here said, well, yeah, I've been charged with doing this, this, and this. Nowhere in that list did I see anything about, well, early education and even adolescent education about the very thing that we now know is a leading cause of death amongst teenagers. Is this where you come in?
Yes. So we work within the prevention and education sphere. But I have to say, for most funders, education and prevention is not very sexy, if I may say, right? Like, it's not a matter of saying, well, we're going to save so many lives, because down the line, we are here to avoid developing problematic use and addiction. I'm not saying that harm reduction strategies are not worthwhile and that they shouldn't be there, but they should be done complementary with education and prevention to avoid getting there in the first place. And we know that cost to society of somebody who develops an addiction over their lifetime will cost the society $490,000 as far as healthcare costs, justice costs, lost productivity, right? So avoiding this and making sure that we're raising people that are strong and resilient through our youth is so important. And investing in prevention and education, I'm preaching from my choir for sure, but is vital for us to not have to, because right now we're draining a lot of resources, rightfully so, in helping people that are struggling. Right. Let's make sure that we're also making sure that they don't get there.
Well, the hard part is, okay, you didn't become addicted. You went on to lead a productive life. I can't measure that against what is a very real, this person died, that person died, this person's in the hospital, that person's in jail. And so I think that makes it a little bit more difficult. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, because going back to your metaphor or analogy earlier about drowning, we don't measure people who didn't drown.
Correct. And 90% of adults living with addiction started during their adolescence, right? So let's talk about it before the age of initiation to make sure that kids are delaying experimentation, and if they are deciding to experiment, they do it in the safest way possible.
So is the gateway drug, like you talked about alcohol and marijuana use starting at 13 and 14 years of age.
Correct.
Is the gateway drug marijuana? Is it cigarettes? Or is it alcohol? Or is it a combination of all of
So
those?
the substance of choice for teens that has the highest prevalence is still alcohol, followed by cannabis. And we've seen vaping, nicotine go up, right? So we were dealing with the low range between, depending on the province, 4 to 7% of kids being addicted to nicotine with cigarettes about 10 years ago.
Right.
Fortunately now, looking at high school students, past use of vaping devices in the past 12 months is up to 30%. So we're losing ground with that. Hence the importance, as well as talking the difference between vaping nicotine and vaping cannabis with your kids.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So ideally you want to start with these conversations when they're young.
Before the age of initiation, yes.
A lot of parents are going, isn't that a little too young or whatnot? Going back to the fact that we're living in dangerous times, there's no margin of error.
Correct.
What resources do you have for young families?
So they can come to our website. We have all the information on the substances, what do they look like, what are the effects, how does it impact. So it's all fact-based, it's all vetted by experts, psychiatrists, pediatrician, so parents can access this information. They also have...
That information isn't there just to scare the daylights out
of
them.
No, not at all. It's in the spirit of educating yourself so that when you're talking about it, then you feel more equipped and you don't feel intimidated by initiating the conversation as a parent, because it may be intimidating at first.
Even when you're talking to your 6-year-old.
And even when you're talking to your 6-year-old, how do I do that? Am I pushing it too hard? So all of this, we have guides on how to have age-appropriate conversation, what kind of topics you can say. So it's all suggested there on our website. But if parents need a little bit more hand-holding and they don't really know how to start, or they're suspecting drug use and they don't know where to turn to and where they get the resources, we have this thing called the Parent Support Hub, and it's an online chatting place where people can access a mental health specialist, a real person, and they can exchange confidentially information. They can call if they're more comfortable using the phone line. And then if they need even more help, they can be referred to a psychologist or a mental health specialist for up to 5 free sessions.
So does a early on conversation sort of start like, okay, I'm going to sit you down and we're going to have the drug talk now?
That usually doesn't go too well.
Well, but how do you now start to introduce this into your life and into the life of your child?
Fair enough. So you normalize it. You set goals for yourself, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with this conversation today? Are you trying to find out if they've tried it before, and why is that important? In what context do you need to know that? Or do you want to establish if they understand what THC is versus CBD and what does the percentage is? So, and then you practice. You practice with either your partner or somebody that you trust. How do you think I should? Doing open-ended questions. Again, all of this is provided through our website. But you practice, and then you allow yourself to be vulnerable. And if you're not feeling comfortable initiating that conversation, say it. Be authentic. That will allow your kid to be authentic too, and to be candid and say, listen, this is important to me. I want to talk to you about cannabis. I don't know what you know about this, but I'd like to explore it together. Is this a good time? That's one of the examples that we give. And the kid may be saying, I'm not ready for this. I don't want to talk about this right now. And as a parent, you have to be persistent to be able to say, okay, this may not be the right time for you, but it's important to me. I love you and I'm concerned about this. Can we please set some time within the next 48 hours? Circle back and accept that maybe the first conversation will only be a couple of minutes. That's okay. Come back at it, right? It's not done. Please shy away from thinking that you're going to have the talk. You check it off your list, it's done. No, because they're exposed to different things all the time. In a vacuum, they'll find information elsewhere. You want that information to be validated and reliable.
How important is parental modeling?
So important. Kids are looking at us. We're the first people they're going to turn to. We do tracking studies. Kids are telling us that, their preferred source of reliable information is their parents, before peers, before social media. The important word here is reliable. So they're looking at us. We saw it during COVID. And as parents, as even just regular human beings, being faced with a pandemic first time in our lives, the 5 o'clock glass of wine on a Friday became a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing. As soon as you would reemerge from your office, you'd say, okay, I need to calm down and I need to have a glass of wine. In this spirit, what kind of modeling are you doing for your kid as a coping mechanism that you need to turn to a glass of wine to finish your day? There's nothing wrong with drinking wine. I'm not here to to demonize any substance. But being able to recognize that, and even as a parent, when I'm saying making yourself vulnerable, telling your teen, what, I haven't noticed, but now that I'm thinking about it, this is the 4th day in a row that at the end of the day, I have a glass of wine just to chill. Maybe I could go for a walk. Maybe I could have a bath. Maybe this is not the best way to de-stress. Being able to voice it and making yourself vulnerable so that your kid is allowing themselves to do the same.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I think there's probably more parents that would have an alcoholic beverage for, that little bit of stress relief than there are parents who are going to say, yeah, I'm going to just go out and, have a couple of puffs on
but
marijuana.
That happens too.
But for those parents that do consume marijuana, is it important that they also are doing so in a way that models what might be appropriate consumption?
Of course. And being able, and some of these parents come to us and they shy away from the conversation. They're intimidated. They're afraid of, being told, well, why can't I use it if you're using? Why are you allowing yourself to do this? We walk them through different scenarios of being able to address this. One of the first things is that, why is it important to you? Is my usage impacting you? I'd like to know more about this. Tell me more. And engaging, and then all of a sudden you're opening up something that may be a very rich conversation with your kid.
Well, and as you say, you've got a bunch of resources, and so being armed with information about what the impact of marijuana smoking is on an immature brain, which is under 24. It's not like under 14.
No, it's under 24.
Like there are significant, unfortunately, negative effects that can affect somebody for the rest of their life because they started to consume marijuana too young. And so even if your parents are smoking, if they can at least share that information, maybe it gives a better framework.
Correct. And being able to be armed with those facts, right?
So what happens if you go, okay, well, I didn't have those conversations with my children when they were 6, 9, 12, and they're 14, and now I'm starting to suspect that they're consuming and they're not telling me. How do I deal with that?
So more than ever, is it ever important to start engaging in those conversations and coming at it, may sound cheesy, but with love and concern, keeping your emotions in check. Like, you're going to be confronted with some of the stuff that you may not want to hear. And ultimately, one of the answer that we suggest is, if your kid is actually confiding in you and confirming your worst fear that they're using, and it's, bringing your emotions to, like, it's not providing the right context for me to have a conversation. You can say, thank you for your honesty. This is a lot for me to handle right now. So if you don't mind, I'd like us to revisit this in a couple of days, right? But you don't have to, you can be in shock and you can be, but thank your kid for being honest. You don't want them to close that door right away, because then, as I said, they'll turn to somebody else.
Well, and that's probably the worst of all possible scenarios, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So how did drug-free kids come to be?
Advertising people. The genesis of Drug-Free Kids was a bunch of advertising executives who wanted to have a contribution to society above selling things. So different advertising agencies would rotate every year and provide pro bono work to do public service announcements. And then we would turn to media partners and ask them to air the commercials for free. And last year, public service announcement. So last year we were able to gather $30 million worth of free airtime with traditional media, so print, TV, radio, digital. And we've evolved into doing this, but also doing grassroots, community-driven training. Our website talks and help parents through different communities to be able to get them to speak with their kids.
And you're a non-aligned NGO? Like, you're not aligned with the government, you're not aligned with...
we get no public funding whatsoever.
Or churches or anything.
Oh, no,
you're just out there on...
We're just, and my board of directors are CEOs of large national companies who simply put their corporate hat at the table. And well, they come and they help to make connections, but ultimately they care and they embrace the cause.
And where can parents find more information?
To come to our website at drugfreekidscanada.org, and they can find all the information and even chat online and get help.
Wonderful. Thank you.